over here when we were switching cameras is I just toned over this entire area that was skin tone. I think I toned over it with like a 12 drop or something like that, but I just used a quick hand motion, just toning over this. Really because the idea behind contrasting these flowers is to get rid of all of the skin tone that's behind it. So we're basically toning down the background to make the flowers pop more. So anywhere where there's skin tone, you gotta start to come off of that edge. Like even here, yes, the sword is negative, but we had to come off of this edge pretty dark so that we could tone down the background. And then even as we get into these little pockets, you'll see we're gonna tone all that down. Most of it's gonna be black in that area, but we're gonna go ahead and fade it out as well. Angling the needle the right way, focusing on the edge of this branch. Could even make tiny circles, even come back on a backstroke. And then you got it black. Make sure we come off this edge perfect. Making sure the edges is saturated. It's the most important part of this entire thing. Getting right up on the edge and making sure it's completely saturated. Do not move on from an edge until you know it's perfect. Because if you do, by the end of it, you're gonna move on, you're gonna realize you have 10 different edges that aren't perfect, thinking it's not gonna be that big a deal, and it's gonna affect the overall look as you finish. That's the key. Don't move on till you know it's good. Just in this specific situation, there's a lot of black behind these, so you want to do your darkest tones first. So you're going to do, what the darkest in this is black, so we're going to go black. And then once you get the contrast, you could start going into the center of the flowers. What's the darkest in the center of the flowers? There is some black in the center of the flowers. So you start with that, and then you start working your way to the lightest tone. But right now, we're gonna focus on the black in the background. Now, there are situations in these flowers where the background wouldn't be completely black. This is just very contextual to this piece itself. But the rule of thumb is the tone that you use in the background still has to be darker than the darkest tone that you use in the flower. So even if there's like a little bit of black in the flower in here, that's completely fine. But the darkest tone that you use to actually shape the petals and stuff, the background tone, you would want it to be darker than that. That way you can get a real good contrast. You notice how black this is? I'm making sure it is completely saturated so that the healed version of this is going to be very similar to the fresh version. So we're not moving on until it's completely saturated. I know this, whatever, stencil might look a little light in there. I can totally see it. Probably in the camera it looks a little light, but it's still there, guys, just so you know. So we're gonna go over here, same thing, get the edge. Sometimes when I'm in a tight space, I'll sketch some shit in there just to see where it's all landing and making sure the needle's hitting in the right spots and stuff like that. So I'll just do it real quick. And once I see, I'm like, okay, I see where it's all hitting at. Okay, now let me get in this corner really quick. A little shimmy on the edge, making sure the edge is saturated, and then you can pull it out. Then you get that perfect corner where there's no gap between the edge and the saturation. Even with a big mag. If I was doing this on a smaller flower, maybe on the same flower, maybe on a forearm, I would definitely be using maybe a 15 mag, just for a rule of thumb. But for this, how big it is, a 23 mag is totally appropriate if you know how to use the edge of the mag. Wherever I think I'm gonna start fading it out into a lighter gray, I start getting these flicks in there. That way it's easier to fade into another gray. So I kind of feel like right around here, I'm gonna start getting a little lighter. Still gonna be dark, but I want to start fading this black into a slightly lighter gray. So I'm gonna start pulling this out, making sure the angle of my needle is really good so I can get this good, smooth, saturated fade out. All right, I'm not going to rinse my needle out. I'm just going to dip into my 12 drop. So now there's still some of that dark in there from the black or whatever, but we definitely toned it down a bit with the 12 drop. As I get up on the edges, even though I'm using a gray, I'm still saturating the edge. I'm not doing like too much finessing up against the edge. So this right here might actually look, on the camera, it might look black, but it's actually a really saturated dark gray, and that's what's gonna help us start fading it out a little bit. And then once I wanna actually start fading it out and you can get that little smooth fade out effect, I'll start to do a more flicking motion. But for now, I'm still saturating because I want these edges to be solid. So right now I'm in a light gray. I'm in like a 3 drop. Just coming off of this because these buds kind of go on the outer edge of where I want my dark shading to end, but we still need to contrast them. So even though we're still in a lighter gray, we're still gonna make sure that it is saturated up to the edge. Even with a light gray, this is super important. Whenever you're coming off of something even light, saturate it. Make sure you try to get that line that you created to almost disappear with the saturation. That's how you get that realistic effect. This is why I said if I should just do like this little area, because it's gonna take some time, unless you wanna like edit it down a lot or just have a long video. Just sticking to the process, getting the contrast down, taking my time. Everything is intentional. When you guys have the right depth and the right angle and the right needle depth with your machine, the right hand motion, all of this stuff, when all that comes into harmony, this black is gonna sink in super easy. It's not gonna be difficult. As you can see, most of the time when I'm going straight for black, it just shows up black first try. But that's because I'm just being super intentional. The amount that I'm stretching the skin, and then how deep I'm going and then holding it there. And making sure I'm feeling it saturate. That way I know when it's saturated before I even wipe. I could tell that it's gonna be saturated before I wipe it. Start fading this out now. This time I'm going to rinse my needle out just because I want this fade to be a little more drastic going towards the samurai over here. We're not getting to the samurai today, but I know I need to fade this out. And then when I come back to it after it heals, I can decide how much to bring that black out, but I don't want to do too much right off the bat. So I'm going to go into my 12 drop after I rinse my needle out, see if I could get this to blend. Again, still saturating up against the edge, even though I'm in a lighter gray. Still kind of the same premises as packing the black, but as I get out a little farther and I want it to fade, I'll just start pulling out some long strokes. Notice my angle of my needle. As you can see, there's like a very smooth fade from black to much lighter. That's why it's super important to know in what situation you should dip between caps or what situation you should rinse your needle out and go with a totally new tone. In this situation, I opted to rinse my needle out. How's it feel in this spot?
Good.
Not too bad, huh? Okay. All right, guys, so I just drew on some of that stuff so you guys can see it. I know in the camera it was really hard to see the stencil, so I redrew some of it on. I'm about to start the center of this flower. I want to preface this by saying that there's many ways that you could do this, and I'm just going to show you one way. Sometimes with these pistils that you have in the center of the flower, they could be solid black, they could be double lined and negative, they could be positive but not solid black. There's just so many ways to do it, but overall, as long as you get the contrast and you get the pistils in the center to really look organic, you can't go wrong. So I'm opting for a double line, and I'll tell you step by step as I do it. This is just the way that I chose to do it for this specific flower because it's bigger, gives me more opportunity to do a little more. So in a lot of these cherry blossom flowers, the petals come together, like layer over each other, but then they separate right before they hit the bottom. So sometimes there's this little teardrop shape right here that separates them that you can make solid black. And looking out for these is really important because it just gives you a really perfect solid black shape to help contrast the edges and just add a little bit more detail that also have like a purpose to them. So we have a couple of those in here, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit those first since they're solid black. All right, we got those in there. Just really quick, I'm gonna dip into a really light gray. I'm just gonna finish off some of these separations right here. So from here to here. If you go too dark, it's gonna be hard to like separate them and to make it make sense and all that. This one, let's go. So right now all I did was I mapped out some of the pistils. If you don't know, pistils are the little things that are in the center of the flowers. They're called pistils, so I'm just calling them that. I'm just mapping out where they start, how many of them I want, and they're just kind of starting it out. I'm gonna finish off them with a mag, but first I'm gonna hit the dark part of the center of the flower, which is pretty much black. So all I'm doing now is I made some circles in the darkest area in the blacks right here because yeah, there's pistils that go out from the center and you could see the stock of them, but there's also a couple in here where you're just seeing the shorter ones and the ends of them. So this really gives us an opportunity to have some little circles, little negative circles that kind of fill in that area with some little more detail. So I have the very center of it black, but as I'm coming outward, I'm dipping in a lighter gray, and then that's what I'm gonna use to start fading this out. And then we'll start shading the actual flower. Right now we're working on what I would consider the center of the flower where the darkest shading is. And then we'll start working our way to the lighter grays here in a second. So that's what I'm doing right now. All right, now that we got that center dark and then slightly faded out with the start of the pistils, I'm gonna switch to my 13 mag. I was doing that with my 7 mag, forgot to mention that, just something I can get in there real tight with. Switching to my 13 mag and I'm gonna start bringing it out. I kind of want the ends of these to be soft, so I'm gonna mag it, but I'm still gonna go very clean. You'll see what I mean. So in this case, it's important to know which petal is on top of which petal. So we know that this petal is on top of this petal, so our shadowing or our shading would come from this line here going this way. And then the shading coming from the center is the one that is actually shaping these pistils as it comes outward. And as you can see, it's kind of a cool effect. As they get shaded outward like this, the tips of the pistils are softer, and then they get a little more defined as they get to the center so they can see the separation. But the softer ends to them, at least this is the way I do it when it's this big, makes it look a little bit more accurate to how it would look in real life. Okay, so we're not gonna overshade. So we're gonna move on to the next one. I'm in a 3 drop right now. So as I'm doing this shading, I'm going super soft backstroking, making sure it's extremely smooth and intentional. Created a little flip in that petal there, which is what I wanted to do. I didn't want it to just be flat because some of these ones on the sides usually flip over on itself. So now what we're trying to do is create these kind of folds. So we're actually gonna bring one inward from the tip here. Backstroke, smooth, soft, light. Still trying not to tone over all of the skin break because we need that for it to stay nice and bright, balanced and contrasted. So while I'm on these outside ones and I'm picking these textures to add in, I'm looking at the folds in the actual flowers on the edge. Like if they kind of curl in and stuff, I'm kind of giving it a shadow to where I feel like it would dip in, dip out, that type of thing. So it's more accurate to the actual shape of the flower, but I'm also not overdoing it. So even on these outside ones, like the one I'm doing here, I'm not gonna do too much. Now I'm gonna just focus on how this one layers over this one mostly, so I can get the shape first. So even though I have my main pistils coming out of this, I'm just putting a couple of these end ones here and there, staggering them, making it look busy. Even if there's not an obvious pistil that's coming from this, it still gets the effect. Some of these pistils are so light and so busy that you might not even just see them popping up in a reference. So it helps to make it look really busy, especially for these bigger ones. You just start placing them here and there, making sure you stagger them, making sure there's some sort of intention to it. Sometimes the hard part is just actually sitting down that long. Some people get hella antsy. If you know why you come here and you're gonna fucking sit for it, you know? And I saturated all this on the back of the knee and stuff. Yeah, this was painful for sure. He didn't say anything, but I know it was painful. I could tell because I could see your head like kind of go like this, like look back a little bit, like, are we fucking done yet? Like that type of shit.
You're still dipping the needle.
Yeah, I know. Dude, welcome to getting tattooed, dude.
Express is easy, quick, and functional.
You know what we should do here? I just thought about it. If we offered 2 price points for the exclusive, We offer one where they get all the clips of this and then the opportunity to pay a little extra to get the full video and all that type of stuff. If you pay the more expensive one, you just get the full video. We're not doing it around the entire perimeter of the flower, like a straight line just going all the way around, because believe it or not, that's actually gonna flatten it and take away from its curvature. It's just gonna look flat. It's not gonna look like a 3D thing anymore. It's gonna look like a sticker more than anything. So we're just picking spots where it's really crucial to hold that edge and making sure that some of the texture that we put in the flower doesn't get overpowered by how much white we put in it. So solidify this right here. If you guys have any questions or there's anything else specific that you would want to see, go ahead and comment in the video comments. We're definitely going to be looking a lot at the comments for your guys' feedback. I know we're adding in a ton of value and stuff, but I want to make sure you guys are getting as much out of this as you can. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. And if they're a good question, then we'll answer it in a video format, or I'll just literally make a video where I'm showing you exactly what you're asking for. So this is a huge opportunity for you guys to basically learn whatever it is you feel like you need to learn. And then as you're a subscriber, we're gonna drop stuff that I think you need to know. So you get the best of both worlds. Vibrant, high contrast flowers. As a final note, I would say the smaller that the flowers get, you want to put slightly less detail of these folds in it. Maybe you can get away with one. Sometimes if they're small and you want them simple and to pop out, maybe you just shade them to separate each petal and leave it as is. And then like I said, there's many ways to do these pistils. You could do them solid black, but as long as they look natural and flowy as if it were a real cherry blossom. So I gave you a detailed version of this, but I think you guys can take a lot from this. So check out the final results. I'm gonna send you to that right now.